Okay, I call this meeting to order at 5:39 p.m. Thank you for coming early tonight. I know you wanted to come later, principals, but we wanted to get you in and home earlier, so. In accordance with Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, signed by Governor Baker on June 16, 2021, suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, General Law, Chapter 30A, this meeting of the North Reading School Committee is being conducted with some remote participation. While no in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted and a quorum of the school committee will be in person, this meeting is concurrently being presented through a Google Meet and by a live broadcast from NORCAM to allow the public and any school committee members who cannot attend to participate. I will say for the record that Mr. Buckley, Mr. McGowan, Mr. Friedman are here in person, along with Superintendent Daly. Assistant Superintendent Mr. Connolly is on the Google Meet. Assistant Superintendent, did I say principal? Assistant Superintendent Connolly, Assistant Superintendent Mr. Clean is here, and School Committee Member Diana Boutwell is on the Google Meet as well. So we have 4 here, so we'll have to do roll call votes for votes tonight. So welcome, everybody. We will begin with public input if anybody has anything they would like to speak about. Hearing none, we move on to the student report. We have Cassandra Fitz, class of 2024, I hope.
Yes.
Here to provide us with a student report. Welcome.
Thank you. So for academic matters, the first day of school was September 7th. We're now in our first quarter of the year. Sign-ups for PSATs for the sophomore and junior classes are starting to open, and back to school night is on Thursday. For fine arts, auditions for the High School Musical Pippin were last week. The cast list was released, I think, yesterday. North Reading is hosting a marching band competition, I believe October 8th. Don't quote me on that. I think we are hosting about 11 schools, which is a lot of growth because last year we had, I think, 3. For athletics, fall sports have started. As of today, Mass Scores states that our varsity standings are 1-0 for boys cross country, 0-1 for girls cross country, 2-2 for girls field hockey, 2-0 for football, 2-6 for golf, 2-1 for boys soccer, 2-1 for girls soccer, and 1-3 for girls volleyball. There will be a home football game Friday against Pentucket. The activity fair takes place on Thursday in the library. And recently, I'm sure the other committee members will talk more about this, but North Reading High School received a national banner recognition from Special Olympics International for its commitment to inclusivity. For my student work report, I was just going to talk a bit about Town Day because I volunteered there this weekend. There were a lot of student volunteers. We spent about 4 hours setting up, I think 7 to 11 a.m. There were some smaller local businesses there as well as some bigger ones. Attendance was great. There were a lot of people who came to help and sell as well as a lot of people from the town who attended. And I don't really have any work to present because school just started, so that's all.
Excellent. Comments, questions, thoughts? No? I'll say, well, the only questions I'll ask is PSATs I haven't heard from in a long, long time. So yeah. Just curious, like what subjects do they do PSATs in now?
I believe math and ELA, and I think ELA is broken into reading and writing.
Okay. And then the banner for inclusion by Special Olympics. I didn't know anything about that yet. Is that something we've received that before? Or do you know?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
I think Dr. Daly was going to speak about it a bit, but.
Dr. Daly, you're going to talk about that later on, the Special Olympics?
We were.
Okay, that's fine. We can postpone later. Thank you very much. We appreciate you coming, and you're welcome to stay as long as you want, or you can head out whenever you want as well.
Okay.
So.
Thanks, Cassandra.
Okay. Moving on. We don't have Notorious here yet, correct?
Correct.
Do we want to begin with school improvement plans right now since we have guests here? Do you want to wait and then maybe
we could do that?
We could potentially interrupt if
that's what I was just realizing, like I'm not sure. Do you know, EJ, whether Allison is aware of the 5:30 start? I may not have communicated so many times with her, but
I saw
yeah.
and it was my impression that
Okay. Well, if not, we'll slip them in whenever they get here. Maybe we can, maybe
Yeah.
finish whatever presentation we're doing and then sneak the kids in.
Yeah, makes sense.
Okay,
Okay.
great. So I was just gonna start with an overview, then we're gonna go we decided to go in reverse order. We're gonna start with high school, then go middle school, then go elementary this year. I just wanted to start by, thanking the committee and for having this on there, and thanking our principals for all their hard work on these plans. This has been, as you know, one of my goals this year and last year is to have some more alignment between district goals, school goals, educator goals, and individual and department goals as well. And so what you'll see through the presentations tonight are some changes to the overall process at each school. And it's been a lot of work has gone into that alignment piece. So you'll see some references to the district plan. You'll see some changes from what we've seen in the past. One of the things I talked to them about was really trying to make this about this year's goals. I want to see it very clear to the reader, whoever's reading the plan, within the first few pages, where we're going this year, right? So I think in the past, we had a bit of a system that we presented in June, and it ended up being a discussion about how the year went. It was sort of a end-of-year kind of conversation with some thoughts about the year ahead. What we came to at the end of last year, because there was so much work being done, I realized that it might be beneficial to have some additional time. And as we did it, it seemed so natural, and we've talked all throughout the summer, that it makes so much sense to have this done at this time of year, because we're now getting some of the data from MCAS and some other things related to goals so that we can include that. My suggestion, and this is going to have to be a bit of a policy revision that we can talk about, I'm actually going to suggest we go a little bit later, because right now even that MCAS data is still embargoed. So if we do this in October, we could have that last school council meeting of last year around this time, and we could have that group come together, look at the data, conference about it, did we meet our goals, and help define the goals for the next year. And then school committee technically should be voting to approve these within 30 days of the school council presentation and the end of it. So I think that all makes sense. That would be sort of the timeline. So you'd have sort of one last meeting with the council. So those are things that we're working on talking about. So what you'll see in their presentations, though, you'll see some references to some of the district goals tagged in there. You'll see the 22-23 information up front. We went back and forth talking about, well, which school council gets recognized? Is it last year's or the upcoming? And so there's bits and pieces that are different. And what I heard certainly from the principals, and I agree, is like we want to have more of a blueprint moving forward about the parts of the plans that are alike and then places where they can be different, because it's different at elementary, middle, and high. But I think we want to have a core that's pretty consistent. So you'll see some of that. But that's still an area that we're looking to certainly improve upon and continue to develop in the future. So we've talked about having more of a narrative up front in the future, where the principal reflects on sort of the focus of not just what the school council does, but what the school council specifically did this year to review the parts of a school improvement plan that are required by law, and then to identify some of those things that may be related to the goals they've chosen, and some that the council felt, we've got this and we're not going to make that a priority area for this year. So I think that could be there, as well as possibly a bit of a reflection on the goals and whether we met them, that's very much spelled out. So I think you're going to see some very different formats. I think in the high school, I think in some ways similar to the district plan, where there's a single page that you can branch off of. I think that's a lot of what we're going to see in the high school presentation. And I think in the middle and the elementary schools, I think a lot of what you see is similar to what we've seen in the past, with some few updates and changes. And their presentations will include some more deliberation on whether they met the goals, whether they did, and what the school council talked about. And I think it's fair that if that's something you'd like to see more ahead of time or in an executive summary, you can certainly do that as well. So, AJ, do you want to come up and share the high school plan? I can put this up here.
I am going to put this in case a link needs a quick
Yep.
connection.
Okay, so this should be
Yes,
good to go.
Yeah, I was, yeah, there we go, that's what
I
it is.
assume you're going to walk us through all 215 pages tonight? I'm kidding.
Well, yeah, I thought,
That's why we started at 5:30, AJ, so.
well, I was going to use this as the template. First of all, I'd just like to say thank you for the opportunity to speak on behalf of the high school, and also just with respect to part of Cassie's report and the acknowledgement as being a national banner school, certainly quite an honor. So there's 12 in the Commonwealth and 164 in the country. So
Nice.
it's a tremendous honor for the students. I couldn't be more pleased. And I segue to kind of one of the things that you will see in the presentation here is, as we look at our 22-23 tab here, implement and incorporate opportunities and strategies to access student voice. And this was something that a number of students had, thought about. There was an idea. I want to absolutely recognize Andy Cooperstein for her hard work in this. And, it's kind of a message that we say to the students at the beginning of the year. You help build the school that you want to be in. And they did exactly that. Through working with the Special Olympics, creating our unified basketball team, other unified events, unified bocce. We've already got games on the calendar for October. And, it's just a really strong indicator of the feeling of belonging that occurs on campus. And again, very, very proud of that. So what you have here, we have the number of tabs along the bottom, and these are, I'm hoping, very live links. And it's the same information, but a little bit different than the document that I shared with you. So the document that you got was essentially all of this information on individual slides, so you had access to all of the links. And it might, somewhat slightly different than this version. So all of the department work is, I might just, Patrick, you okay if I just make this like 90?
Yep, makes sense.
There you go. All of the department work is under the columns of these 5 goals. The MTSS implementation, as is so well defined in the district plan, the incorporation of kind of a tier 2 support model and strategies for students that we recognize in English and math that need some intense accelerated instruction. Goal 3, as a one-to-one school, one-to-one district, this idea of we're always going to be, tied to some kind of blended learning and technology in our instruction, so what are we doing with that? Again, goal 4 around accessing student voice, and then goal 5, making sure that our highest level courses, especially our AP courses, are accessible for all students, and if they aren't, why is that, and what does that look like? So that study will happen this year. So the links that are here, and we can just speak about them briefly. So what the department leaders have done is essentially completed a goal template, let's say. Each of those links opens to,
Just click that share this tab.
one more time,
Just click that share this tab instead,
share this tab.
just so
instead.
Diana can see it. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So you have essentially what the goal is, and then how are we achieving it. So with respect to the work around instruction, writing instruction for students that are identified either through MCAS or other data assessments that we're tracking, that they're underachieving with specifically with writing instruction. This goal outlines how that's going to be achieved through the 5-topic rubric that will be in place to assess and measure. I'm going to quickly go back. We can look at, for example, in mathematics,
I don't think you're sharing on the Google Meet anymore.
I'm sorry?
You're not sharing on the Google Meet anymore?
I'll do.
Okay. Just so people know. You can see it up there, but.
Stop somehow. It's okay.
Oh. I did close a tab up there, maybe that's
It's
what
okay.
happened. So, with respect to mathematics, their, one of their goals under goal 3 is essentially identifying and recognizing that there are a number of apps and technology items that are incorporated into the instruction, Edulastic, Desmos, Delta Math, et cetera, and saying, aren't these in place then to make it easier and provide more opportunities for students to complete the homework, to complete the assignment? And shouldn't we see then, because this is in place or that's in place, that therefore we're going to have a better homework completion rate, et cetera? So working with the department leaders, identifying specific measurable goals and establishing those, identifying them, and then filling out this sheet to say, okay, to get that to happen, what are the resources we need? Do we have all those resources? Is it something that we don't have? And for the most part, I would say that, I feel pretty confident that things that we want to be able to accomplish to achieve these goals, we have access to that information pretty regularly. This format, this template then kind of allows us to think, well, what are we going to achieve in the short term, and then what do we expect to achieve in the long term? So Patrick, so before I jump off this, how am I going to go back? Just click back up here?
Yep, click there.
Okay.
And then if you want to
Very
just
good.
open another one,
Yep.
and then click share.
So again, as you can see, if we, across all the 12, 13 departments, 2 to 3 goals apiece, there's a lot going on. We can look and say, okay, how did we get here? Go back and take a peek at last year. So again, the goals, for the most part, are very similar in that sense of we know that MTSS isn't necessarily going away. It's a commitment, and it's a pedagogical approach that we're tied to with, the fundamentals of Tier 1 instruction, what's happening at Tier 2 instruction, what are we doing at Tier 3 instruction. Again, knowing that when we look at students with certain graduation requirements with respect to the MCAS, if I pass the test but I didn't achieve proficiency, what's my educational proficiency plan for that to happen? This Tier 2 instruction, as identified under Goal 2, is meant to help achieve that. So, again, we started that last year. We rolled it forward to this year, the blended learning type of goal. Again, that we're not getting rid of the devices. So, while there's some similarities here, those similarities are rooted in the foundational pieces of the district mission and the district plan, the NRPS 2025. I did spend a little bit of time here on Goal 4, as I had, you may recall back in the 2019-2020 year, we were just about to implement our 2-year pilot on a senior final exam exemption policy. Of course, we didn't have final exams in 2020, and nor did we have them in 2021. So this was the first year that we actually got into year 1 with that, and there's, let's make sure you have that. 1 second. You have this, you have the slideshow there, but I'm going to make sure that it's here as well, obviously, so everybody can see it. And it should be, it is shared, so it should open. Huh, it said here that it's shared.
Maybe just refresh it.
Yeah, let's do that.
Just click refresh.
Oh, that's frustrating. What do you think here, sir?
It's a new variable we introduced to try to make this smoother.
And there it is. Oh, there you go. Thank you. So we had our specific criteria. You, as a senior, you had at least a 93 average. You accrued no more than 3 unexcused absences from a class, and you met the expectations of the student code of conduct with outlined in the handbook. Again, the kind of the mastermind behind this was Karen Sang, who created in Excel kind of a calculator where we front-loaded all of the student grade data and then shared with the teachers essentially what was the target number that would get that student eligible at the 93. So then the teacher could have a sense of communicating to the students like where you were, what was happening, so that we had our calculation day. Students knew ahead of time. And when we go back and look at, say, kind of why were we doing this in the first place? We thought it made a lot of sense to honor hard work at the students that maintained a 93 average, and doesn't then a 93 average indicate mastery in the material and that you do know it. So we're taking all this extra time to ask you something that you already know. And to prevent kind of a senior slide, it is what it is, I'll just finish up and get out of here, and, my grades are my grades. And what I like at the data that we have here for the 162 seniors, I think there's a couple of things that really stand out. So 162 students took a total of 1,285 exams. 391 of those exams were exempt. So 30% of the exams were exempt. And if you look at, say, how many students, a total of 40 students were not eligible either because of attendance or discipline. So then you had 110 of 122 eligible students. So almost, essentially 90% of the students had at least one exemption. And I think it speaks to that piece of we're doing this to keep students motivated and keep them engaged through that third quarter, fourth quarter, prevent that senior slide, honor their hard work. So my hope is that we'll have obviously a second year of this.
And that seems surprisingly high. I mean, it's great, but it just
For one, everybody
Yeah,
have
for
at least one. Yeah, I mean, I think we need taking 8 classes.
Yeah.
I think,
it's great.
yeah.
Don't get me wrong.
It is, no, I appreciate that. And if I suppose you could look at that and say, well,
I have no
only
conclusion, just-
30% of the exams were exempt,
Yeah.
but a lot of people get at least one. And I would say, right, you should be taking the courses you want to take in that sense, All right, so I'm going to go back here. So I don't know how long I've been talking for, but any specific questions?
Mr. McGowan, Mr. Friedman, Mrs. Boutwell.
I don't think I have any questions. I do appreciate this process you did for the exemption. Again, partly because it gives us some numbers to keep an eye on. I'm actually kind of interested in the 2 ineligible categories to see how that might change over time as well.
Yeah, I
It's
agree.
good to have those numbers to look at and sort of follow this program along, so appreciate that.
Thank you.
Friedman?
Each of the goals, I mean, what I like is each of the goals is measurable, and you're defining it through data, and it's, you read it, you get it. It's exactly what was just discussed. Anybody reading it gets it, so I very much appreciate it. It's great.
Thank you.
I would say my comments, do you want just on the senior stuff or on everything? I mean, I'm just curious, are you done with the whole presentation or just?
Yeah, I guess,
Okay.
I guess I'm taking questions now,
Okay.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, a lot of my questions and comments are more broad for all the improvement plans, not just for one, so it's hard to figure out when to say what, but I would say in this one specifically, I appreciate all the data. Like, I think, I say a lot, I'm not an educator. I see now why I'm not an educator, and I don't, our role is not to know all of these things, but one thing that I really liked in this one was seeing the underlying goals because high school and middle school are different than elementary in that, you know, students have multiple teachers and there's different departments. And so it was nice to see that next level as well and be able to say like, oh, this is what the math department's doing, this is what the English department is doing. So I thought that was extremely interesting, and I'm a big nerd, as everyone knows, and so I like reading that stuff. And so I found that really useful. You know, I think trying to be more similar, like if the district plan is like this, I mean, even just the way that's presented was really useful. I think the key thing to make sure is making sure they are identifiable and, you know, measurable, to make sure that, because again, like when something's like, you know, like one of the goals was like measure and report on, or whatever it said, measure and
monitor.
measure
Oh,
and
yeah,
monitor.
this is, yeah.
Like measure and monitor, you know, like, well, what is that? What is the measurement, you know, that we're looking at? And then the other thing, and again, that's for all improvement plans. And like some of the department ones were really clear, but just, you know, whenever we can get that in there, just so that we know if it's been achieved. And then the other thing that was inconsistent across different departments, different school improvement plans, was whether or not it was met before, you know? And, you know, just from a school committee, it would be nice to say like, you know, I think some of them said, this was here's my goal last year, it was met, and now this is our new goal. And some of them were like, well, this wasn't met, so it's still our goal for next year.
Yeah.
And so it's hard when like we see something, we see the same goal, just to be able to understand whether it's the same goal because it wasn't met before, or it's the same goal because we want to make sure that it's, you know, you need a couple of years of that in order for it to stick. Those are kind of like my broad comments, but I don't think I had anything else specific. Yeah.
If I could, Mr.
Yeah,
So-
go ahead,
so
Dr.
one thing that Mr. LaPre and I have discussed is just how the departments presented the councils and how that could shift. One suggestion that we discussed, I'm not sure if it's gonna go this way, ultimately it's up to the principal and the council, but you can see where it says data here, ongoing,
Yep.
and then next steps. So the idea being that the departments might provide updates to their goals throughout the year, as opposed to maybe this group presents in this month, this group presents in that month. So it's it changes a little bit. I don't know logistically how that would work, but it's that idea that, you know, if you present in October, you're kind of never really telling them anything than here's our goal. You never really close in the circle. So to maybe have that there, and at least, even if they're not presenting live, they can update it here, and then the members of the council can review those
Sure,
goals.
reflect it on the
Because the
sheet.
council has to decide, exactly like you said, did we meet the goal? Do we need to extend it? Something like the final exam, they didn't meet it because of the pandemic, but enough had been done in the pilot that they were kind of clear that it wasn't really a school goal anymore, but it's still happening, and that's what we wanted to show you tonight, because the next step of that then obviously is a handbook change that will be coming before you.
Right, that would be the
So-
request at the end of this year. We've done this pilot for 2 years.
So,
Are
but
we
that's
okay
the,
with implementing this as a full-time?
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, from the school committee role, it's just nice to know what's going on, because, you know, it's not our role to set these, but, you know, we are advocates for the schools and for the principals and for the teachers, and it's nice to know what's going on. And the only other overarching thought I would say is, setting high goals is not a bad thing. Like, I also don't think we're not gonna come in and say like, well, you only met 3 of your 5 goals, that was bad. Like, we don't want you to set really easy goals, like, I'm gonna show up at least 80% of the time next year. Like, that's an easy to achieve goal. Like, I think,
Yeah.
you know, if some goals aren't met, that's fine too, but just, again, that was just when I was reading through all the different improvement plans, that was just the one thing. Some of them are really clear, like, this was last year's, it was met, then I went back and saw, okay, how do they change it for the following year? And some of them it was harder to understand where that was coming, but, no, I thought it was a good,
Yeah,
good job.
Yeah, I mean, for example, with our writer's block
Yep,
model, I mean, we're saying 100% of the students are going to be proficient after 10 sessions. Like,
Yep.
what, if it's not 100%, then
yep.
we're leaving somebody behind, so.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. I mean, like, the other piece of this goal is, I mean, I think North Reading is a really strong district already, you know, and it's not about saying like, oh, we need to get 92% instead of 90%. To me, it's more about, well, there's 10% of students that are struggling. We want to make sure that they understand that we're not forgetting about the other 10%. You know, to me, it's not about you're judged better if you're 92 versus 90. I think, you know, we talk about that with what was the achievement or whatever that we have to, what are the accountability goals that we have, you know, and our district is at the point where like it's, you know, it's splitting hairs on some of it, but I think the overall mention is just there are students that are still struggling, and, even if 90% aren't, we're still focusing on those 10%, and
Yeah.
that's what's good in these
And
goals.
and that's exactly right. And what I like, one of the things I like that you mentioned, and I'm sure it's part of the other presentations and certainly part of the other plans, is that idea of you might pass the NCAS, you might be getting through your courses, but we see you struggling with proficiency in certain areas, and we're not going to just let that go because you're passing, right? So to continually work on improving proficiency across all subject areas is, a very rewarding thing to see happening. And I'm sure it was happening before, but here it's happening much more visibly and measurably, which is awesome.
And it'll be, to have another set of this data will be really key.
Yep, and of course, we all recognize how disrupted the data has been just overall in the last 3 years. And so we're all looking forward to having some consistent data going across.
Okay, Mrs. Boutwell.
Thanks, Scott. AJ, I just wanted to make a comment and just say I really appreciated the structure of this and how you had things rolled up at a high level, but able to drill down and see that detail, and it was well put together, and I appreciate that. To Scott's point about, I think what he was alluding to was really progress over time, and, as a school committee being aware of that, for what it's worth, I know one thing that's worked in my environment that I work in is kind of celebrating those successes and talking about the challenges when it's something this large, you have multiple departments rolling up. And I think we hear a lot about those things in the school committee from time to time, especially the successes, but maybe there's an opportunity to highlight kind of those things at a high level from time to time so that we could, understand, where all those successes are and maybe some areas that you will continue to roll over as they need to be worked on. So just wanted to.
Thank you so much, and I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Okay. So, do we want to accept them individually, or do we want to accept all of them at the end? It's easier.
I think we should accept them individually.
Individually?
Yeah.
Okay. If there's no more comments, I will entertain a motion to accept the 2022-2023 high school improvement plan.
I will so move to accept the high school 2022-23 improvement plan.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. We'll do a roll call vote. Rich?
Aye?
Jeff?
Aye.
Diana?
Aye.
I'm an aye as well. Passes 4-0. Thank you.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Pratt.
Thanks a lot.
Okay. Dr. O'Connell.
Notorious is coming up, but they're not here yet, so
Okay.
I'm thinking let's do middle school and
Yep.
then we'll go. So, let me just close some of these here.
All right.
Place will empty out at that point.
This is you. Kathy, did you just have one?
If they don't come, everybody else is going to sing, right?
I'm just going to share.
You have to make that a new rule. Whenever Notorious comes to ask for something, we make them sing a song for us.
I'm fine with that.
I was gonna say we're gonna put Mrs. Kane on like as a regular recurring thing.
That's right.
Every other meeting she's here, so. And I'll repeat that joke when she's here, so just laugh again. Just kidding.
All set? Oh, okay. Hello, everyone. I'd like to just acknowledge the school improvement team, the school council from last year. It was myself and the assistant principal, Laura Oliveto, 2 teachers, Gail Demori, who is a health teacher, Kathleen Kerwin, a robotics teacher. Our community representatives were Marissa Morello and Amy Lukowitz, and our 2 parents were Linda Emery and Jody Cloney. They helped me throughout the year implement the previous year's plan, but then also develop this plan, and I'm grateful to them for their assistance. Just to highlight this past school year, we implemented year 1 of our Bridge program, which is a program that the high school has had, I believe, for maybe 6 or 7 years. It's a program out of, that comes to us from the Brookline Mental Health program. It's called Bridge, and it helps students who are returning from school after an extended absence or who are struggling with consistent school attendance. And we implemented year 1 of that program, and I'm going to share a little bit of data about that in a moment. We also continued our use of our guidance check-in form, which is a way for our middle school students to self-refer themselves to their guidance counselor for for assistance, whether it's social emotional assistance, peer conflict, or something that they might be struggling with at home, or a scheduling matter. We created a way for students to easily create an appointment with their guidance counselor, and also kind of give some formative information about how they're feeling so that the guidance counselor can be prepared to receive them. We also saw some improved iReady scores in math and reading, which was a goal of ours. I will get to the specific data in a moment. And then, exciting, we implemented 3 new extracurricular opportunities for our students, which is super important at all ages, but particularly at the adolescence age. We want to make sure that there are opportunities for students outside of the classroom. And with the school committee's support and approval, we implemented an American Sign Language Club, a very popular Dungeons and Dragons Club, and then also a super impressive a cappella group led by the amazing Miss Lister, the Harmonics, which is pretty cool. And kind of going in line with that, with lots of thanks to our Assistant Superintendent of Finance, Mr. Conley, who I believe's in the meeting, we were able to implement a late bus last year, which, as a working mom, when I was teaching school and my children were of this age, they couldn't participate in lots of activities after school because they had to take the bus home. And so having the bus the late bus on Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays is a great opportunity for our bus riders to be able to participate not only in the extracurricular activities, but also academic help, getting extra help. So those are just some highlights. I'll go into a little bit of detail now about them. The Bridge program, last year that program received about 11 students, which may seem like a small percentage of students. However, helping 11 students get to school more regularly is obviously super important. The reason for the referrals was mostly extended absences, but then there were also a smaller amount that were preventative, seeing maybe not consecutive absences, but seeing a pattern of excessive absences, and then trying to be proactive to help the student with attendance. And then we had an 82% full return after receiving the Bridge intervention. 82% of the students were able to fully return to their academic schedule. And the average time that students were in the program was about 11 weeks or so. That doesn't mean that they were exclusively not attending classes. There were individual plans made for students to slowly increase the percentage of time that they were in the classroom setting, and also still having a safe supportive home base in the Bridge classroom. And we saw the distribution across all 3 grades accessing this program. We're excited to continue it this year in year 2. This year we have a full-time adjustment counselor his name is Mike Hirsch, and he will be taking care of the clinical aspect of the Bridge program. And then we also have an academic academic interventionist who will help the students with their academic return to school. And so the goals will be helping those students to develop their SEL skills and their ability to find their voice and advocate for themselves and their needs, and also increasing communication and making sure that the home to school communication is strong, but also the teachers with the Bridge program teachers and the students all working together to help the students participating in the program get into their regular schedule as soon as possible. Our guidance check-in data shows a very large increase in the number of students who were actually using this tool to seek help from their guidance counselor. Last year there were 420 student referrals using that form, as opposed to the first year that we implemented it, there were 278 referrals. And you can see an even distribution among the 3 grades. Again, this is just a quick way for students on their Chromebook. It's right and clever. They can just make an appointment, like you or I might make an appointment to see any doctor or care provider, and then very discreetly the guidance counselor schedule a time for them to meet with the student. And if you recall, last year I presented the mood meter as a tool that we use for students to develop their emotional regulation vocabulary, to become more self-aware of the emotions that they're feeling over the course of a day. And this is part of the check-in form. So they're really building their understanding of themselves and how their energy levels and how they're feeling positively or negatively. The iReady scores, we did not meet our goal, as Mr. Buckley mentioned earlier. We try to set rigorous iReady goals, and we did not meet our goal, but we did see an increase in the percentage of students meeting their growth target number. And just as a point of reference, in the middle school improvement plan, at the bottom, the last part of the plan has the goals from 2020, 2021, 22, with whether or not we met the goals and the data to support that. I mentioned the extracurricular activities and the late bus. And then our goals for this year are, now that we have MCAS again as a baseline, we're going to use MCAS as a data point. We're constantly, again, as Mr. Buckley mentioned, we're constantly looking to help our students that are not meeting grade level expectations get to that achievement level. And so we're going to look at students from the spring 2022 MCAS that did not meet expectations, and we're going to target those students specifically. And what we want to see as a goal is that their growth percentile is 50% or above, and typically anywhere between 40 and 60 is deemed to be, adequate growth, and we obviously want to see the growth as high as possible. The only way students that are not at grade level are going to, that achievement gap, the only way that will close is if they make more than a year's worth of growth in 1 year. So we really want to focus on the students who did not meet expectations based on the MCAS scores from the spring. So that'll actually be an ELA goal and a math goal. They're just not in order on the screen. But so that's the ELA goal. The science goal, because there isn't student growth percentile data available, because students take the science test in 5th grade and then in 8th grade, there's no growth percentile that's given to us. We're going to look at the common assessment data that the science teachers create. We are going to spend some time. We've had a lot of new science teachers, 3 new science teachers in the last 3 years. So we're going to take some time this year with the science department to really look at the common assessments that they've developed, make sure that they're still appropriate and valid and standards-based. And as we collect the pre and post common assessment data and the interim data, we're going to really be sharing that data and talking about it as a science department. Again, science, unlike ELA and math, also do not have iReady as a diagnostic tool, so those common assessments are always important, but they're especially important in a subject like science. And there's the math goal that I mentioned, similar to the ELA goal, that we'll be looking at the student growth percentile based on the MCAS scores. And then, as always, we're just looking to work with our amazing digital learning team to build and help support our teachers' ability to innovate and integrate technology. Last year, I failed to mention as a highlight, but I think it really was a great highlight that Dr. Downs and I worked together to assign isn't the right verb, to partner up our content area grade level teachers with a digital learning specialist during their planning time. So they collaborated together to work on integrating technology. And one example is Jim Segroy, a digital learning specialist, worked really closely with Chris Davis and Catherine Jones on their civics project. And he was super helpful in helping them integrate technology into the civics project. Thus, teaching and learning, they're all categorized based on NRPS 2025 goals. Student support services, we are going to be continuing with our MTSS intervention blocks. This year at the middle school, where we have historically implemented MTSS intervention blocks as a tier 2 or 3 intervention, but we're also really focusing this year on tier 1 instruction, which is obviously very much a part of the MTSS framework. But for this goal, we're going to be looking at students that are identified for interventions during our weekly intervention blocks to make sure that the interventions are helping. And by doing that, we would be collecting data pre and post 10 weeks, which we've done in the past, but we're really going to look at the tools that we're using to measure that data and make sure that we're analyzing it effectively for the purposes of determining whether or not the student continues to need the intervention. We typically do 2 10-week blocks of intervention time in the fall and then in the late winter, early spring. But we want to make sure in the January point when we're reassessing that our data points are valid and accurate so that we're identifying students for the intervention that they need. And then we will continue to look at our social emotional supports, particularly with that's goal statement 2 is around the bridge program to be decreasing the chronic absenteeism. I know that the MCAS scores are embargoed, but they are, attendance is definitely part of accountability, and it's something that we're working on improving for all of our students. They need to be here in order to learn and grow, and that's something that we are going to be measuring based on the data from last year, the attendance data from last year. And then this particular goal is a new goal this year based on data from last year. We did see an unfortunate increase in student suspensions, and it's something that it was important to me and the school council that we work together to decrease the number of suspensions this year based on the 2021-2022 discipline data from last year. Discipline data along with attendance data and achievement data are all triangulated to get a whole picture of student performance and well-being. And this particular data point stood out last year, so it's something that we really want to focus on. And in addition to decreasing the number of suspensions, we want to increase the education for students, the Tier 1 education around healthy choices and good decision-making and good peer relationships. That would be the Tier 1 education, but then also providing Tier 2 and Tier 3 interventions through our guidance department around students that we see that are struggling with making good choices and with peer relationships. And then our DEI goals, we have 2. One would be to continue. This is something that we've been continuing to work on. I'm not sure that we'll ever, well, I will if I'm told to, but I'm not sure that I would ever support dropping this goal. I think taking data on climate, on how students and staff are feeling in the building, whether they feel like they belong, that they have someone that they can talk with, that they feel supported, is very important to student achievement. There's direct correlation, empirical studies have shown, so we need to keep it, but we're going to keep measuring that and hoping to see an improvement. As a point of note, we did not see improvement last year. We saw a dip in perceptions of climate in both students and staff. There's lots of reasons I could attribute to that, but we are going to move forward and we're really going to work hard on seeing an increase in those perceptions because they really are very important. And then we are going to continue our work around building an understanding and awareness of equity and social justice themes, particularly as they relate to adolescent development, to include just a clear understanding of vocabulary and terms and how they may or may not connect directly to the content areas. And I think that's my last goal. Those are the goals. And again, the data from last year is at the end of the school improvement plan for your viewing.
Okay, thank you, Dr. O'Connell. Comments, questions?
I have at least one question. So, so the mood meter, do students access that sort of is that just tied into the desire to get help from the guidance department, or are they filling that out just sort of throughout the year whenever they feel like it?
Right now, it's tied into the guidance check-in form. However, last year in the spring, we did in the winter and the spring, we did a mid-year mood meter dipstick, like a formative assessment. We asked students optionally, can you fill this out for us? It's completely anonymous, just to get a sense of what are students feeling. And we do have that data. I think I included it in the plan, just to see if you asked 500 students what quadrant of the mood meter is the school in. You could then disaggregate it by grade level and other demographics. So that's where it is right now. I know that NRPS 2025 hopes to identify some sort of universal screener tool that perhaps could be used on a more regular basis. It would likely not be the mood meter, but something like that where we're checking in more regularly to get ahead of any patterns or problems that we
and
might
to see patterns, yeah,
right.
for sure. Yeah. I think that's it for the moment.
Mr. Friedman?
Yeah, a couple of things. I know MCAS is under embargo. Does that mean this plan takes that into account, as in the most recent results? Or are we waiting for results to aggregate those? You're nodding, I'm not sure what you're nodding.
I'm nodding that we can use embargoed data to set goals,
Okay.
to do, we just can't publicly discuss the
That's fine.
results. Very soon,
Yeah.
we're very close, but, to use that information for student placement, for curriculum design, course design, or for
Okay.
forming goals, at a certain level, the administrators can
Yeah,
clear
that's-
whether, yeah.
It's been mentioned a few times,
Yeah.
but I didn't know what level of access was available to form these goals. All
Right.
right,
I would say
that's-
maybe the entire council doesn't know everything, but
That's fine.
they would know at least whether like, hey, I think we can move on from the goal.
We're using them as a data point even
Yeah.
for Title I identification for students in
Mhm.
need of math intervention.
Other thing was, the suspensions obviously stuck out. I'm glad there's a goal around it. Any patterns that you've seen or noticed about, other than, I suppose, COVID generally or whatever, but anything sticks out as to why it's increased?
Well, much of the data was pure conflict, and I think it's easy to say that, the time that they spent at home.
Right.
Weekend.
And I'm not saying that's an easy answer, it's
No,
just,
it's one
You're
variable,
right.
that they're, at this age, the peer relationship and the conflict resolution skills definitely, I think, were put on the back burner for a little bit.
sure.
I would also add, my brother's a middle school teacher, and he affectionately referred to masks as muzzles, and said students were a lot easier to control when they were muzzled and sitting 6 feet apart from each other. And so when they were, when they came back and they had to take off when they were closer together, like, it's hard when you're 6 feet apart to really be chatting and stuff like that as well, so,
Don't get too close to me.
yeah.
No, this is great. I appreciate all the hard work that's gone into this. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for the opportunity.
I have a couple comments and questions, and I don't want to just repeat what I said before, but, just a high level, I appreciated seeing what the results were before and then, where you set them afterwards. And a couple things on that. There were a couple of goals that were met, and then they're on there again. So I'm curious if you could speak to about, like, one was about integrating technology, one was in student services. Like, why, if it was met before, is it on there again? And then similarly, there's a couple of them where, like, if the goal is 80% and you're only at 52%, is it realistic to see that high of a jump in 1 year?
Yeah, those are great questions. I actually talked to Dr. Daly about the technology goal. As a district, as you know, Mr. Buckley, we had technology as its own big rock in NRPS 2021. And then when we revisited that in NRPS 2025, we all agreed that it's still so important and it needs to be part of everything that we do, and it is. I think, if anything, the goal could be better written to still incorporate the technology and maybe at a higher level. For example, I probably could have written something around the planning together of the DLS and the content area teachers and written a goal around the two groups working together. I didn't do that in part because last year was the first year that we sort of paired them up, Dr. Downs and I, and the feedback was excellent. But I think next year I could really work on a goal around that relationship working together, the cross-curricular two departments working together. And then the 80%, I feel that it's hard for me as someone who sets rigorous goals for herself and for the school. I want to reach that percentage, and I certainly could lower it, but I want.
Aim high.
I want to keep.
Yeah. Aim high.
We'll get there.
Yeah.
Hopefully, I won't have retired by then.
Yeah. And, yeah, I mean, again, I think the report was excellent overall, and, I mean, just sort of following up on the high school one, it would be interesting to see some of the underlying department things as well. If, again, I don't know if it happens the same way at the middle school as the high school, but, just to see what other groups are doing as well, if it is the same way. Like, again, I don't exactly know if a middle school and high school are set up the same way, but, if there are other goals there, that'd be interesting to see as well.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point, and I appreciated Mr. LaPrette's presentation, and I think that the middle school could incorporate more department voice in the plan for next year.
Okay. That's all I had. Is Boutwell anything? I don't see a hand raised, so.
No, I appreciate all of this. It's always really well done, and appreciate the reflection on some of the things that maybe weren't met, and that you're, continuing to strive towards. So,
Yep.
thanks so much.
Thank you, Diana.
Excellent. If there's no more comment, I will entertain a motion to accept. I won't repeat the whole thing because Rich is going to do it anyways.
I move that the committee vote to accept the middle school, school improvement plan for the 2022-2023 school year.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, we'll do a roll call vote. Rich?
Aye?
Jeff?
Aye.
Diana?
Aye.
I'm an aye as well. Passes 4-0. Thank you very much, Dr. O'Connell.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. O'Connell.
Okay, I think we're going to
First
take
time
a,
we've had an upside-down school committee member.
I know.
in the meeting, so,
Jeff is,
yeah,
Auto rotation failure.
that's funny. I thought that maybe we just bring in our
Yep.
notorious group as they're here, so,
we'll
Mason,
move
you
to the
wanna-
notorious section of
I'm
this.
going to put up, did you guys have anything else to share? I have this slide. Perfect. Okay, oh, and just let me share it for Ms. Boutwell is at home. Give me 1 second. There you go.
Thank you, Dr. Daly. And thank you guys all for having us here tonight. There are a lot of familiar faces, but for those who, oh, should I step back? For those who don't know, my name is Mason Murray, and I am the External Affairs Manager of Notorious. And we were here tonight to try to get the wheels moving on this Notorious trip to Orlando in March. So last year when we competed in ICHSA over April vacation, we placed third. And with all that fame, a couple other groups and other, I guess, organizations are reaching out to us and wanting us to perform at these other events for them. So this event down in Orlando is run by Shannon McNulty and Deke Sharon. I don't know if any of you guys know them at all, but they reached out to us and they asked if we would be one of the features for their slots at the event. It's a big learning event for us, as well as getting the performance ready for ICHSA. We'll be taking classes, which Colin will talk about a lot more than me, but also we'll be doing busking, which is when we'll go around and make some people uncomfortable by singing to them, and they'll give us some money, and we love it. And we'll be doing some night performances, but we would leave on March, Wednesday night, March 22nd, and we would get back that Sunday, so we would miss a Green and Gold Day, Thursday, Friday. And so with that, Colin will talk about the classes that'll be there. Thank you guys for having me.
All right, so my name's Colin. I'm a senior, and I'm one of the music directors for this group. And basically, what these classes do, they give us the opportunity to teach us like everything about a cappella, the whole world, right? So we have, you have like music production classes, there's music business classes, there are classes talking about college prep, not only that, but like what to do after college, as well as the performance aspects, like we have vocal, there are vocal coachings, as well as a private master class for the whole group.
Yeah, and just to sort of coattail off of what Colin said, the classes, we would get there late Wednesday night. We would have the classes from 9 to 5, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, and then we would do performances each night after that. Oh, sorry, just Friday, Saturday. The Thursday, we're just doing a separate performance, but Friday, Saturday, 9 to 5 classes, and Colin said what they entail, but now Lucy will start.
Hi everyone, I'm Lucy Wagner, I'm a senior, and I am the other music director for Notorious. So for travel, how we're actually getting there, all of the travel is going to be handled by the Bob Rogers Company, who sets up a portal for families to pay. Estimated there's 18 people going, which includes 2 chaperones, and the total for each person is about $1,000. So luckily for us, we've already begun thinking of some ways to fundraise for this trip and already started with events, parties where we can be hired, bake sales through school and restaurants in the area. We have Compass Rose programs and the Haunted Playground, which will be coming up, where Notorious will help out and make some money for themselves. So basically, all of the stuff is handled by the Bob Rogers Company, and once we get there, all We have an all-access pass to classes, so we can go to any of them that we want and learn so much stuff. And then we also get 3 nights of performances covered, as well as all the food for the trip.
So yeah, that was really quick, but for the whole thing. But I believe that the sheet that we handed out of all the things? Oh, okay. You want to talk about that one?
Yeah, I didn't
This
have
one.
that, sorry.
Yes.
Yeah.
of
Oh,
our
so
process.
if you turn to the second page of your packet, you'll notice that we have a schedule laid out. It's just a typical.
Yeah, we do.
Share this, yeah.
Oh, sorry.
See it,
it's the bottom, it's supposed to be the bottom of that piece right there, where it says like Compass Rose Caroling.
You can speak to it, I'll try to put it up.
Okay. Well, this is just an example of some of the class schedules that they put out for students. So there's tons of stuff to do, and basically students, we would all try to split up and go into different classes, and we bring notebooks, and then we come back together as a group, and we'll try to like share everything from the event and try to get out as much knowledge as possible. So, for example, there are educational settings. They have times for to work with famous conductors or famous arrangers and just try to take in all the experience they have. And yeah, that would be our schedule throughout the day. So we're working hard from 9 to 5.
Excellent. Yes. Any comments, questions?
I don't think so.
No. I would just say it sounds like an amazing opportunity. I think it's
Yep.
great that you guys, are being celebrated and you get some,
Yep.
reward from that. And, it's also nice that you guys aren't, kind of resting on your laurels. You're trying to continue to improve, and, yeah, I think it's great. I think it's, very unique for high school students to be offered some of these opportunities as well. So I'm glad that you guys are getting them, so.
Yeah, I don't know, I'm not sure that we ever had a chance to congratulate any students who were here representing Notorious. Some of them may have been here for other reasons, but after that win or the third place finish, it was quite an accomplishment. And so, yeah, I think it's great that you guys are, as you say, not resting on your laurels. So
Yeah.
Thank you.
Up and up.
Yeah, and we applaud the music department here, Mrs. Kane, Mrs. Lister, both here as well. I think that,
Yep.
it's year over year, students change, and the program has just been built into an excellent program, so thank you guys for coming. We need a motion to approve.
I will be happy to move to the committee vote to approve the Notorious trip to Orlando on Wednesday from March 22nd to March 26th.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. We'll do a roll call vote. Rich?
Aye?
Jeff?
Aye.
Diana?
Aye.
I'm an aye as well. Passes 4-0. Thank you, guys.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you, guys.
Okay. We gave the elementary principals a little bit of a break here, but now are you guys going together or separately? Okay, there we go.
We have secret elementary principal meetings.
Am I first? So good evening, everybody. This is the elementary presentation. It's always so nice to be here with you. A little bit of a different time of year that we're doing this, but we think, as Dr. Daly said, that this time of year provided us the opportunity to work collaboratively over the summer and really dig down deep into what we wanted our goals to be for our schools. So thank you for allowing us to do that. I'm Christine Wally, the principal of the Little School, and I'd like to thank my council members who were instrumental in not only the outcomes of the goals of 21-22, but the development of the plan for 22-23. And that is Beth Brown is a teacher in our building. She was an academic interventionist last year. She has returned to the second grade classroom this year. Francine Coughlin is a parent representative. Carrie Fleck wears many hats at the Little School. She's my principal designee, as well as a reading teacher and the data leader, and also a teacher representative on the school council. Katie Gabriello is a parent representative. myself as the principal, and we had an open community representative position, which I think I have finally filled for next year. I'm keeping my fingers crossed. So we're looking forward to that. So thank you to them for all their hard work and, you know, arriving at meetings every month to work on the plan. So some highlights from 2021-22. We returned to school in September of 2021, full-time and in full capacity. We could not have been more happy to see those children arrive in September, and we had a great year. All classrooms were updated with new smartboard technology over last year, and a lot of it was completed actually this summer. We did a lot of professional development on diversity, equity, inclusion, and on the science of reading, which really ties in with our ELA goal and our diversity, equity, and inclusion goal. We spent a lot of time as a school, as a professional learning community, working on the universal design for learning, social emotional learning, and it continues to be a focus for the faculty. 97% of our students reported feeling safe and supported at school based on year-end surveys. The teachers take surveys in the classrooms. So that made us feel really excited, because some of the kids really were reluctant and had some separation issues after being at home with their parents for so long. So for them to feel safe at school, it really means the world to us. Based on a family engagement survey that we did, 95% of the responders were pleased with the level of communication coming from the school, and 93% of families reported having contact prior to the school year over the summer with their classroom teachers. We felt that was important as the children were returning full-time, that they have contact with their teacher to kind of alleviate some of the anxiety that the children might be feeling coming back to school. Our faculty meetings have been morphing into a professional learning community, and this past year we had a number of topics that we worked on, writing across all grade levels, and that was a focus of ours based on data from MCAS and some of our iReady data that we had, universal design for learning, social emotional learning. We started to introduce to the faculty and staff the MTSS, Massachusetts Tiered System of Support, and of course working on diversity, equity, and inclusion. As you may recall, we received a grant from Subaru, the Subaru Loves Learning grant, sponsored by Adopt a Classroom. We spent that $3,000 across all grade levels to upgrade classroom children's literature with more of a focus on diversity and inclusion. And I would be remiss, and I have to say this without looking at Dr. McKay, if I didn't mention the fact that we were the 2021 Turkey Trot winners for 8 years running. Sorry, Glenn.
I give up.
Sorry, Glenn. So the first two goals for our elementary school were to improve our iReady scores. And the goal was to have, actually, I think mine was 85%. Tier 1, to have 85% of the children at year end in Tier 1, 13% in Tier 2, and 2% in Tier 3. So this is the results beginning of the year versus end of the year. So you can see, for instance, in grade 3, we began the year with 62% in Tier 1. And by the end of the year, we had 88% of the students in Tier 1. There were 15% in Tier 2, 12% at the end of the year, and 23% of the third graders for ELA were in Tier 3. And by the end of the year, we had no children in Tier 3 for grade 3 ELA. The areas that you note in yellow are places where we did not meet our goals. So grade 5 ELA, we did not achieve the 85% goal for Tier 1 students. We had 23% still in Tier 2 and 3% in Tier 3. And in grade 3 math, We just missed the 85% with an 81% in Tier 1 and 19% in Tier 2. Other than that, all grade levels and, content areas met their goals, and I'd like to point out grade 5, and kudos to our grade 5 math teacher, Mrs. Polcari, and the special education teacher, Mrs. Sparrow. By year end, 100% of the children in grade 5 were on or above grade level in Tier 1, based on the iReady math. So that was quite an accomplishment. If you look at whole school, the whole school is a little bit different because we started this year having iReady taken in grade 2, which we never had done before. This is the first year. So for the ELA scores, that is a combination, including grade 2. It's not just grades 3 to 5. We did meet the overall arching goal of 86%. I believe that if we pulled grade 2 out, we probably would not have. And 87% in math Tier 1. Because of those yellow areas, I've chosen to keep the goals at the same 85% so that we can give it one more year to try to achieve that goal. This is just a visual of where we began the year and where we ended the year. So if you look at the top 2 triangles, which are reading grades 2 to 5, you will see that we had 53% of students in Tier 1 at the beginning of the year, 36% in Tier 2, and 11% of the children in Tier 3. But by year end, we had 86% in Tier 1, 13% in Tier 2, and 1% in Tier 3. So visually, it's a nice looking triangle, if you ask me. Even better for math, we began the year with 31% in Tier 1, 63% in Tier 2, and 6% at risk in Tier 3. And we ended the year at 87% in Tier 1, 13% in Tier 2, and 0% in Tier 3. So that's an even better looking set of triangles, if you ask me. So, new goals for this year align to the NRPS 2025. Again, I chose to keep the teaching and learning, ELA, and math goals the same because of those categories where we were somewhat deficient. And so we will be working diligently to get those scores up and hopefully be able to up our game on our goals next year. Goal number 3 is the student services goal of implementing MTSS across grades K to 5. We've begun that process at the little school by hard scheduling what I need blocks in all grade levels for 3 days a week. And we will begin in October, early October, doing a real implementation of WIN blocks for ELA. We're going to start with ELA and then move on from there. And then our last goal of diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, I added the belonging. The school will align their professional meeting time, educator evaluation plans, and the school improvement plan on the initiatives of UDL, SEL, and MTSS to expand choice and access for all students. And most importantly, I think the belonging piece of that goal is so important because every child wants to feel like they belong. They want to feel safe, they want to feel supported, and we believe that working with the faculty and the staff to fully understand all of these areas will get us to where we need to be as far as, and we also want to improve our collaboration and family engagement. And I'll tell you a quick little story. Back to school night the other night, we had a parent who was so overwhelmed because we had welcome signs on the walls in different languages. And she was so overwhelmed that she took a picture of one of them and sent it to her mother, where her mother lived, and thanked us for including her culture, her language within the walls of the school. So I think it's important to do that work not only with our students, but with our families, and make them feel like they belong as well and that they're included in our school community. And I believe that's it for me.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Dr. McKay, principal of the Hood School. So I'd like to start off by thanking my council members, Mrs. Gorman, who is a fourth grade teacher, also my principal designee. I have a vacant community representative position. Ms. Shannon Kelly, who is a special ed / reading professional in the building, and my two parents, Mrs. Catarano and Mrs. Taylor. I always like to start off with a fun little picture, and you'll see, if you look at my outcomes from my school improvement plan, that we hosted our first ever fun run. So the original prize for the fun run was to put a pie into the face of the principal and the PE teacher. I chose to not do that because I didn't think that communicated what we really wanted to communicate. So we elected to be taped to the wall by the class that had the highest participation rate. That's a kindergarten class. The picture should actually probably be opposite. The bottom one is them getting ready to tape me and me really in fear. And then the final picture is all the tape that they used to, sorry, Dr. Daly, about the budget, all the tape that they used to get myself and Mr. Quinlan, our PE teacher, taped up into the wall. And that's Mrs. Lightwig's kindergarten class last year.
Way better than the pie.
A lot of tape.
Yeah.
I needed a little extra, too. So, highlights from 2021. We returned to school full-time, full capacity in September. Our state accountability report ranked us at the 95th percentile. As I had said, we hosted our first ever fundraiser, Parent Fun Run. If you contextualize that to time, it's really important. That was done at Thanksgiving last year, and that was one of our first opportunities to get back together as a whole school community, and that was super important for us to all be together doing something. We elected to do it outside, so it was a wonderful day that'll probably go down in the record books just for pure enjoyment as a school principal. We continue to do our school-wide meetings. We did 4 last year, focusing on safe, responsible, and respectful behavior, and we've added in kindness, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. We continue forward with our Hood School Maker Days. That's when we go across grade levels throughout the school. We mix up the classrooms, and we focus on a STEAM-related task of science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. We typically do those on the 4 professional development days, and we do them on the half days. New for us was we hosted a Hood School community book study, so we had parents, teachers, and paraprofessionals involved in a reading of Permission to Feel. We met online at night. It kind of threw us for a little loop, as you'll see that when you see the school improvement goals. We had so much feedback in many different areas, we were unable to wrangle it all in. All good feedback, all valuable feedback, so we wanted to make that an actual goal in this year's school improvement plan as a result of that. So we read Permission to Feel and discussed it and talked about impacts to the school. Community engagement, we hosted a STEAM night at the school. Mrs. Cleary, our wonderful 5th grade science teacher and our curriculum leader in that area, she really does a nice job, and we had a ton of staff volunteers, so that was really nice to see. We continue to spend a lot of time talking about universal design and social emotional learning as our major focuses going into last year as well as this year. We continue forward with our learning communities. We call them our professional study groups. So we have one called STEAM Ahead. That's where we do a lot of planning around STEAM-related, science-related activities. We have a diversity, equity, and inclusion group that also combined with universal design for learning. The social emotional learning group continued to meet. We had an MTSS group as well as a group studying the science of reading. So each group works about 7 faculty meetings, 8 faculty meetings to get together. They meet, they create norms, they have norms, and they have an expected outcome that they share back to the whole school where they can use, that we use to improve the practice across the building. The Hood School goals were iReady goals, ELA math. We looked at the standard tier of 80% in Tier 1, Tier 2 at 15%, and Tier 3 at 5%. I elected to go a little differently with the data and the way we analyzed it after I really spent some time digging into it. I have a similar graphic as Mrs. Molly's, but I think this one tells a really good story for the Hood School and a really valuable one. So it looks to me like, based on this, is that if you look at iReady reading on the left and iReady math on the right, our baselines came in pretty low, meaning like if you look at grade 3, you see a 57% students in green, and then if you look down, I believe it says 82 on the next one. So if you, I chose to look at this through the lens of like a growth score as opposed to trying to get everybody to a set benchmark. We have that set benchmark. It's the 80, 15, and 5, but we also want to recognize that we have some pretty significant growth percentage points within this data. So for grade 3, in reading, getting 25 percentage points in that tier 1, the green where we want everybody, is a good number. Grade 4, 23 percentage points. Grade 5, 29 percentage points. Math in grade 3 and 4 were really huge for us. So if you really look at that 58 percentage points and 66 percentage points in those grades respectively, like, that's significant. Those were the 2 grades that we happened to really focus in on, MTSS and win time last year. We've always done it traditionally in 4th grade. So like Mrs. Molly said, win time is what I need time, and that's how we can target instruction. And then grade 5, 36 percentage points was the increase in that. So on the next slide, I took some time to really reflect on this data. And as we talk about how we want to have all students fall in that tier 1 or that green area, it became apparent to me that if that tier 1 number is askew some way, it really throws off all the other charts. So I just elected to highlight the tier 1 number that did not meet the 80% threshold. So that was 3 out of 6 for me. We're going to continue forward with that 80% threshold and really try to get 15 and 5 across the grade levels. So our new school goals, as I had said, we are going to continue forward with iReady Math and literacy, getting to 85% of students and 13 and 2, up the benchmark a little bit, but be realistic about, like, more reflective of where our benchmark comes in as we do that. Our MTSS goals, we talked a lot about very specific things at the Hood School during school council, and we really wanted to work on targeted instructional practices as they related to UDL, our DCAP, and MTSS. So in our collaboration notes, staff members indicate what they do and then what they talk about and how they can use that strategy within their classroom to improve practice. We've tied it into our faculty meetings where we have a presentation. So today was our first faculty meeting, and we talked about specifically about student engagement as it relates to the UDL guidelines, and hopes to have a staff member model that in a faculty meeting as we move forward. As I had said, we had the school-wide community book study. Currently, the Hood School rules, if anybody who's been there knows that we preach safe, responsible, and respectful. We worked in kindness, but we didn't think it encompassed everything that we really wanted it to encompass, and then how do we, create that positive environment for all of our students to feel welcome and comfortable in school to learn. So we kind of took the next part of this goal and create a new updated behavioral support and expectation framework within the school, utilizing the data that we received from the Permission to Feel book study, as well as all the data that we've collected from students and staff, and then to work it into the diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging focus of the next goal, where we'll get all of that information and host a social emotional learning night for families and caregivers, outlining where we're moving forward and providing them with resources related to that topic. Because that's definitely something that we've focused on at the Hood School. Mr. Maloney, you're up.
Thank you, Dr. McKay. Good evening. Thank you for your time tonight. It's a pleasure to be here. I'd just like to also to start my school council members. I'm Michael Maloney. I'm the principal of the Batchelder School, and my school council for the 21-22, it says 22-23, and they're the same people. Kate Aronese is a parent representative. Catherine Fay, second grade teacher. Carrie Eichman, parent representative. Myself, my community representative was open. I'm actively searching for that position to be filled for this school year. And Sandra O'Connell, who's a faculty representative. She's a librarian and a paraprofessional, digital learning paraprofessional that works with my digital learning specialist. So some highlights from 2021, 2022. This slide specifically speaks to the goals and whether or not we met the goals that we had stated in our previous school improvement plan. But just some notes that I had taken, the highlights from last school year. It was actually my first full year as the principal of the Batchelder School. I started in December of 2020, so when people ask me how many years I've been the principal, I don't know, because that like 19, 20, 21 kind of just morphs into one big blur for a while. But I was very pleased to open up the building that first day with all of our students back in person, with some wrinkles, but it was nice to really have all the students in school. Some other highlights, some academic, some social, just some value-based things. Something that I was proud of, and it was actually driven by Suzanne Callan and my academic interventionist. We started what we call math scrambles. So we took a look at our data, our math data specifically from iReady, and we grouped students in 4th grade and in 5th grade, and we're expanding that this year so that we could meet the students at their level of need. So some students that need some more support and some of our more accelerated math students, and we group them individually. So it's kind of our start with MTSS to really get students grouped by ability so that we could target them and push and support where needed. We also were fortunate last year to have a school adjustment counselor for the first time. We shared Miss Alexa with the other 2 elementary schools, and that really started the ball rolling for our SEL program. And with this year, we have the full-time school adjustment counselor, Miss Petrie, who's transitioned over from my school psychologist into that school adjustment counselor role, and she's really done a lot of work, and she's put together a nice program to meet the social emotional needs of our students. So she's getting into classes, every class, or teaching a class, I should say. We created a classroom space for her, so it's a 30-minute lesson once a week with all the classrooms. So that's started off very well, and it's been very well received by our students. We consistently, when I was at the middle school, our core values, I talk to students all the time about our core values, and I've taken the baton from Mr. Colleen with the spotlight values down at the Batchelder School, and all the conversations that we have with students, we really want to emphasize our spotlight values. And we start the year off with respect, and we had an assembly on Friday, and we really just talked to students about respecting themselves, respecting others, respecting the building, respecting the adults in the building, and where those values really lay the foundation for the decisions that they make. Last year, to support our SEL initiative, we had a school-wide mindful minute on Friday mornings. On Monday mornings. We would start the week off with the mindful minute, where teachers would volunteer to create a video of a strategy for them to be more mindful throughout the week, and we would play that to all the classrooms on a Monday morning, and teachers would check in. We would use a version of the mood meter throughout the day to where students were, where they came in on a Monday morning, after lunch, and then on Friday mornings, in addition to the mindful minute, we set intentions for the week. So students would state an intention: I want to do this week to foster a good community. And then on Friday mornings, we would check in on those intentions. So that was an initiative that we started in January, and it worked really well throughout the year. A couple other things. The student council was reformed, and Ms. Petrie took that on, and she did a lot of good things for the building to promote community and kindness. And our parents' organization did a really nice job, especially towards the end of the year, to bring some of those enrichments back into the building so that we could have that feel of normal school. And I have to say, the highlight of the year, it was a year and a half as the principal. We had our first in-person all-school assembly before we closed school, and I thought that was important to really close the year, and as equally as important this year to have that opening assembly, to have everybody in the same room and everyone hear the same message. So those were some highlights that weren't on the slide from last year, but just in speaking to our goals that we had submitted, I believe, in June of 21, I think. And again, we had the 2 academic goals that were based on our iReady data, and our learning targets were 85%, I think 85, 10, and 5. And in reading, our end-of-year scores in reading from iReady, and 91% of our students in grades 2 through 5 scored in the Tier 1, which is on or above grade level. 8% of students scored in Tier 2, and only 1% of students scored in Tier 3 based on the iReady reading. In math, again, 85, 10, and 5 were our targets. 89% of students in grades 3 through 5 scored in Tier 1, 10% in Tier 2, and only 1% in Tier 3. So that was our reading and math learning targets. Physically, in a physical and emotionally safe learning environment in the Batchelor School is something I take very seriously, and I feel it's very important. You know, through reflections and other anecdotal evidence, classroom surveys, Miss Alexa had administered some surveys as well just to get some student feedback that overwhelmingly students reported that they feel emotionally and physically safe while they're in school. And if students don't feel emotionally and physically safe, they can't learn. So it's very important. You know, communication is an important part of the fabric of the LD Batchelder School. You know, frequent and consistent contact with families is a constant and consistent throughout the building, whether it's that weekly or daily communication by classroom teachers, whether it's, you know, my principal messages that I would send out as needed. I didn't, you know, try to hit that sweet spot as to how much is enough and how little is not enough. And then lastly, our work with DEI, where we phrase that as cultural competency. And we had an increased understanding through the work with India Barrows, Emily Platt. You know, that increased understanding of cultural competency was realized by the end of the school year. So taking a look at this data, and I just have a few different charts here. There's the two different ways to map this out or to show this graphically. There's the 5-level and the 3-level placement. The 5-level shows you know, mid or above grade level in the green earlier on. So this is our reading data. So 91% of our students were on, mid, or above grade level. And the yellow is one grade level below, and then the red teases it out, and that's the 5-level compared to the triangle, which is just the 3 tiers. And this was the same data with our math scores. So looking at the scores from last year and you know, really where we wanted to go with this, using our iReady data. And I've already had some initial conversations with Ms. Callanan, who's also my data leader, you know, looking at the early MCAS scores and how we perform there and how we can better use the iReady scores to write, I think, better goals. And we really want to, I think the both of us, I agree with Suzanne, that we want to look at that year's worth of growth. So where a student comes in at the start of the year, they're assigned a target and see the percentage of that year's worth of growth from the beginning of the year data to the end of the year data. And it's different than the 3 tiers, and it'll look a little bit different, but we've already had some initial conversations about what that's going to look like for next school year. So based on our performance last year, we want to up the math and literacy targets. We want to up it to 90% of all students in Tier 1, 8% of students in Tier 2, and less than 2% in Tier 3. So that'll be based on that end of the year diagnostic in both math and reading. In our MTSS goal, we want to strengthen our Tier 1 instruction for all learners. And as a means to strengthen that Tier 1 instruction, all school-based teams will discuss targeted instructional. And these are very similar to Mrs. Molly's. So all school-based teams will discuss targeted instructional strategies provided by colleagues, leadership, and team members at their collaboration meetings. So our focus is going to be on that Tier 1 as a means to strengthen that Tier 1 instruction. So that is for all students. And lastly, our last school goal for 22-23, school will align professional meeting time, educator evaluation plans, and the school improvement plan on the initiatives of UDL, SEL, and MTSS to expand choice and access for all students. And if you really look at what UDL, SEL, and MTSS is, it's comprehensive to really allow all students that access and choice, taking into account all those other foundational pieces in that big rock of diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. So UDL meets all those. SEL is that social emotional piece, and MTSS is the three-pronged area. So it's really, I think, a pretty comprehensive goal. And again, all these are aligned to our NRPS 2025 district plan. So that is that.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Maloney.
Thank
you,
you.
everyone. Questions, comments? Look to my left first.
So I was interested in the sort of beginning of year numbers and wondering how those change year over year, and whether you look at that, and interested to see if, were they impacted by the last couple of years of disruption? Is there a reason to expect that you might start out for the stronger base as time goes on, or how do you look at those, or do you just look at that as, that's where we're at right now, I'm not worried about what that looked like last year?
Yeah, I think, and jump in here, I think, the regression over the summer, that gap over the summer impacts that initial baseline data. But that always speaks to, I think, the conversation that we have about sharing this information with families, which we would readily do if a parent or family asked. But if you look at that initial, beginning of the year data, sometimes like, whoa, this is not great. And if people don't understand what we're looking for and where they are at that point, that entry point at the start of the year, and in that growth. So that growth is really what we're looking for in that progress.
Right, for sure.
And I think if we had time, we would have went back. This goal originally started as an MCAS-related goal.
Right.
And then during all the disruptions around the MCAS scores, we started to say, well, we still need to measure, and this was our most accurate measure, was I-READY. So I would think that in the next year or so, this group would be having a conversation of moving back to maybe more of a format of that, and that would lead into Dr. Daly's discussion around having this meeting later, because then the data points would be available. So I think it's a great question, but I think it's complex given the varied data that we received since 2018.
Right.
I'd say across the board, probably we were probably a little lower at the beginning of last year because of the hybrid year, the year before, right? And I think what this shows, I appreciated seeing the different visualizations you were able to do, and I thought Glenn's kind of captured that growth piece that I think is what Rich is getting at, because you see substantial growth as well as achievement at all the schools, which is great. And I'm sure if we threw up graphs comparing this to what we're seeing across the country with that data, are they international? Is I-READY even international? They may be. No? But I think you'd see that the amount of growth that we're achieving in a year's time is really commendable at all three schools, all five schools. But
Mr. Friedman, anything?
First off, Rich stole my question, for the record. No, my question was more about the rate of growth. Is that an average rate of growth? In other words, are we seeing that typically year on year? Are we above average? So I just summarized the fact that he stole my question.
Yeah, okay.
No, I thought this was great. It will be interesting to see what happens in the next few years, just as an interesting data assessment. But I really don't have anything to say other than I appreciate all the hard work that goes into it and all the data that's there. And I always love a good triangle graph, so that's great.
Me too.
I did not.
I know, that's great.
I'll jump in with a few comments and thoughts, and I know Mrs. Molly tried to preface it, but yes, one comment I've been saying is, you hit your goals, rise the next year a little bit, especially when you get rid of the fifth graders who were the ones holding down the math score.
Right.
But,
You have to assess whether, is it the
I know.
students, is it the,
I know. And overall, I mean, again, great presentation. I think what I just found myself thinking more and more about is I don't want elementary to only be about test scores either, and seeing what other criteria we can look at to make them measurable goals, but at the same time, not necessarily only based on, even I-READY it's one test, one day, some kids aren't feeling good that day, some kids are missing that day. I love numbers. Everybody knows I love numbers, but at the same time, with elementary in particular, seeing what other goals there are, and even participation in things. I know that Mr. Tatra said at the school, performance at the end of last year, that more students were doing band than ever before, and I don't know, I just think for the next time, just thinking about other goals that are not only metrics as well, to see what more we could do, and like in particular with elementary versus, upper levels, and, and also to include K through 2, because all these goals are looking at 3, 4, 5, rather than, just kindergarten, first and second. And I don't have any answers to that. I just something that I found myself thinking about when we were sitting through this. Few other thoughts here. Number one, I also do like numbers, and so like the class size, I was really interested to see that almost every section of every grade in this district, K through 5, was 20 or fewer. I mean, the only notable exception was one at the Batchelder where, I think we do, I don't know if we have the budget to do it, but I think we do look at if there should even be, 5 or 6 sections instead of 5 or whatever it is. But I think it's 5 instead of 4. But like that, and then with the fun run, I think that was a great fundraiser that I think multiple schools did, and it was just very interesting to me because Dr. Daly and I are both coaching our kids' soccer teams, and by the way, we meet in a couple of weeks, so that'll be
Now
very
it's officially
interesting.
on the record, huh?
That's in the record, yes. But what's interesting is trying to figure out how to motivate children.
Can we get that on the agenda item on the meeting record, and then we can talk about it?
Oh, it's a lot riding on this.
Well, what was interesting is I've tried to figure out how to motivate children, and I've tried reward systems. I've tried like run more if you don't do well, or give them rewards if they do. What's amazing is my kids were more motivated by me paying more if they ran more than any other motivation I've ever had before. Like, I'm not kidding you, both my kids came home and bragged about how much I was gonna have to pay now because they ran extra laps. And so, I don't know, just a very interesting way to motivate children, so.
We don't do that.
Yes, they did that. So when I explained to them what the fun run was and if they ran more, I'd pay more, they were both motivated, so.
Is that what you do for the turkey?
Yes.
No.
Mrs. Botwell, anything? Want to include her as well?
I just wanted to call out, I know you all referenced the progress, which is amazing to see, especially after the last couple of years. And I know the students worked hard for that, but, the faculty and the staff are a huge component of that, especially just, having those challenges ahead of them and some of the lost learning. So it's really impressive to see. So I really commend the teachers and everyone in the buildings for that. I was curious, just in general, I know we touch upon social emotional learning. Well, I always think about those kindergartners and, progressing to first grade that sort of came into elementary school in the COVID environment. Did you see any specific struggles with them with, the social elements of, the school environment, or did you have to work with those students a little bit more? Or do you feel like we typically think with children, they just bounce right back really, really well, and there was no real difference between that cohort of kids in comparison to others that had a quote-unquote normal year prior?
I think kindergarten is always a difficult year, starting school. Children are very often very upset about leaving their parents. Even this year, I have to say, we've experienced a lot of separation anxiety. But I do believe that as a result of, the pandemic, we have seen a lot of social emotionals, just children's inability to problem solve out on the playground, or to get along, and how to figure out how to, play with each other, because they were isolated for so long and with their parents, at home and not seeing other children. So I think last year, there was more than I can ever remember as a building principal, having more social and behavioral issues as a result of the pandemic. I mean, the school adjustment counselor could not have come at a better time for us. She's done some amazing work along with our school psychologists who work so diligently with the teachers and the children that are having struggles. But yeah, we've seen. I can't speak for my other colleagues, but I think, and I've spoken to other principal friends in other districts, even in other parts of the country. Everybody is seeing that kids are struggling with their social emotional stuff at school. So, we're very thankful for the school adjustment counselor. In the elementary school, she was increased for Dr. McKay and myself split a school adjustment council. We have her for an extra day each. And so, you know, it could not have come at a better time. So I don't know if that answered your question, Diana.
No, it does. I always see a lot around the emotional part of social emotional. You always see mood leaders, things like that.
Yep.
But it's that social piece, like the usage of social language, how to interact on the playground. Like I don't know if there are parts of SEL that's going into that for that reason. So I just brought it up because I was just curious, and I figured the kids were struggling, but I know there's a lot of work being done.
Yes, there is.
I also think, Diana, you spoke to it when you commended the staff for the academic progress and growth. I think they used all the tools in their toolboxes over the last couple of years to help the students, you know, get back to normal as best they can, especially with those social skills.
And we're really looking forward to whole school assemblies, enrichment programs, and just getting back to having some fun at school, because we really, the last couple of years have really not been all that much fun. So we're looking forward to that.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I would just add that one of the things we've been hearing about in the Fine Arts Subcommittee is you know, the beginning efforts to rebuild some of those programs in the elementary schools, rebuilding participation in those programs, and that's an important part of it as well. An area that that isn't necessarily a part of the school improvement plans, but another important area for sure.
Okay. Thank you. If there's no more further comments, since we did the other two schools separately, I think we probably need 3 different motions. So, since
Okay.
Mr. McGowan seems to be the only one that wants to make them, I'll turn to my left.
It's a very reticent group. I move that the committee vote to accept the Little School Improvement Plan for the school year 2022 to 2023.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. Roll call vote. Rich?
Aye?
Jeff?
Aye.
Diana?
Aye.
I'm an aye as well. Passes 4-0.
I move that the committee vote to accept the Hood School Improvement Plan for the school year 2022 to 2023.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Rich?
Aye?
Jeff?
Aye.
Diana?
Aye.
I'm an aye as well. Passes 4-0.
And I move that the committee vote to accept the Batchelder School Improvement Plan for the school year 2022 and 2023.
Second.
Motion and a second. Roll call vote. Rich?
Aye?
Jeff?
Aye.
Diana?
Aye.
I'm an aye as well. Passes 4-0. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, guys. Thank you all of you all.
Aye.
Great job, everyone. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, moving on. I guess we'll go to the school year opening update. Dr. Daly.
Sure, thank you very much. I'm just going to share back here. I put this on the agenda in case there are any questions or comments about how our school year has been going so far. We've really been off to a good start. We had, you got a chance to hear from our student representative today to talk about a lot of things underway. I think the sense that I'm getting definitely when I speak with the principals, when I get into the classroom, see the teachers, it feels much more like a typical year this year. And I think the fact that we ended last year as we did, and we've even further removed restrictions this year, I think that it's been just really a good sense of a typical year. And I don't know if there are any questions that you had. I think if Michael's here, he may have some comments as well on some of the other happenings around school. But are any particular questions about reopening that you had?
I have 2 quick questions. Number 1, what have we seen in the way of absences compared to like previous years?
So I haven't run that data. As far as your student, teacher, are you thinking?
Both of them. I'm just wondering
Yep.
with, there was obviously a lot of absences before, and now that there's not testing, I'm just curious what we're
Yeah.
seeing on that. And again, we can update the next time too, that's fine.
Sure, I certainly can. And we could have asked the principals too. From staff absences, I would say it's much more like a typical year. We're not seeing that. We've had a few COVID-related absences that we've accounted for. And from everything I've heard from principals, it's pretty much the same. I'm not hearing any concerns. I think we're all anticipating that the numbers may increase as we get into the fall and the winter, but right now, So far, so good. I don't know, Sean, have you heard anything anecdotally about student absences? Yeah, in the classrooms I've been in, it's pretty much full rooms, full classes. Like I said, it really feels like a typical normal school year, which is great.
Great. And then the other one was just, we had mentioned before about police officers starting tours through the buildings. Is that something that's begun already, or is that later in the year?
No, it has. It's begun already. We are preparing an email that's going to go out to explain in a little bit more detail about some of our drills. We've had our first fire drills, which happens within the first few days of school. And that other piece has underway. I actually was able to observe it the other day in action, which is great. And so, again, this is just an opportunity for increasing the familiarity with the personnel and with the buildings themselves, and just an extra check. Walking around, what do you see, pointing out things to us. We do those checks by law every year, police and fire, and just increasing those, it just makes everything safer. So that's really the gist of that. So, yep, that's already underway.
Excellent. That's all I had. Anything else with questions? Mr. Connolly, any comments or thoughts?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Buckley. So I just figured I would just do a quick update on some of the operational areas, starting with busing. I feel like overall, I think the busing operation to start the year has been relatively smooth. You know, there's always a few little things we have to adjust with the schedule once we analyze the timeliness of the routes and the 2 tiers from elementary to the secondary level, which we had to make some tweaks and some changes to some of the times, the start times, and so forth. But I feel like we're developing a pattern and a schedule, and I think things have been moving along relatively smoothly with bus transportation. There is a wait list at the middle school and the high school of about 10 students. So, you know, ideally we would not have that, but that was similar to what we had last year. We're just monitoring in as space opens up, or as we feel like there's space, we will accommodate any of those requests. And I think, you know, we're really working on trying to see if we can make some small changes, even with the elementary runs and their arrival to school, to try to see if the middle school and high school runs can get to the middle school and high school by 8:20 if possible, 10 minutes prior. We would love to have, especially middle school students that seem to be desiring it more than in high school at the moment, access to the grab-and-go breakfast that is available. And I think there has been buses that have been 8:24, 8:25, and at one point it was 8:28, 8:29, which we've made some changes. It's now kind of like 8:22, 8:23 arrival time. We're just working on, where hopefully we can give everyone that has at least an opportunity to grab a breakfast that wants it, even if it's very quick, they can grab and go. So some of the bus families, not a lot, that have expressed that there just hasn't been a lot of time there. So Ms. O'Connell's been great trying to work on that. We're trying to accommodate as many needs as we can. But overall, I think it's going well. We do plan on offering the late bus. Ms. O'Connell mentioned that today as one of our highlights, so that will be happening again, and most likely towards the beginning of October time frame that will hopefully start up. In terms of that's kind of busing. In terms of food service, again, we're just the program's been operating well. We did have a little bit of glitch with the menus, online menus, which I think we have addressed last week. I think that's all been rectified this week. But certainly there's a lot of the students from observations that I've had in some of the lunch periods I've gotten out to, as well as the members that over the first 2 weeks of school, a lot of the students are accessing the lunch program. So certainly I think the universally free meals that is being offered is probably has a lot to do with that, but there's a lot of students accessing the program. I've probably observed about 2 or 3 middle school and high school lunch periods, and I don't see a lot of kids kind of bringing their own lunch, which is great, which is what we want, and we're doing everything we can to ensure that kids have enough time to eat and speed up the lines, and we're looking to make some tweaks here and there and adding some stations and some pin pads and point of sale terminals, which we'll hopefully be doing and have done and will continue to do to try to speed up that process as much as possible. But overall, I think things are going, you know, again, maybe not perfect the first 2 weeks, but we've made tweaks and changes, and I think they're going pretty well. Any questions on those two areas?
Thank you. I have two quick questions. Number one is, or question and a comment, the breakfast, is the breakfast free, or is that's a paid, is that paid?
Breakfast is free as well. So
Okay.
It's a free meals program, yep.
Okay, and just the comment is, well, the comment slash question is, how many children are doing second lunch? Because my child is doing second lunch like every day now, and that's apparently the thing for the sixth graders.
So I don't have any numbers on that, I can get that. I will say in the 2 or 3 lunches that I did stand right next to the point of sale terminal at the middle school and watch the food service worker, there was I saw quite a few believe it or not, so, of students wanting that second slice of pizza or that second lunch, and then the first was free, and she actually was showing me how she has to add, and then that charge was hitting their account. So that was happening.
Just anecdotally, that's what I had heard. So more than anything, my sixth grader likes the lunch at the middle school, his favorite thing in middle school, so.
Yeah.
Anybody else, comments, questions, thoughts?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Connolly. Dr. Daly?
I just wanted to share that, you know, a lot of these operational issues that come up in the first few weeks of school, there's so many variables that all fall on Michael's desk, and he handles them so well. There was a hang up with some of the menus, and he dealt with that in very swift order. And the late bus, which keeps coming up here, you know, some of the challenges we have with having all the same start times for middle high school, there's pros and cons to every decision we make, but one of the outcomes is having all the elementary on one tier, all the middle high school on one tier, allows us to do that other tier, which is a huge benefit. So I know Dr. O'Connell brought it up, and it's something we continue to see. So it's great to see that we're able to continue to offer that for the students that really need it.
Thank you. Yeah, and thank you, Mr. Connolly. I know you've done a lot, and I reached out because I saw a comment on the lunch menu on a Facebook forum and had forwarded that to Mr. Connolly and jumped right on it, of course, so.
In all fairness, my daughter thought that was the funniest thing ever.
Yeah. Okay, school committee goals, evaluation subcommittee, or, I mean, I think we have that, and then we have the budget goals. Are we doing the budget goals later on, or do we at the same time?
So we included the budget goals, even though I forgot to include in the packet because Michael had updated his goals to align with the draft of your goals as we discussed at last meeting. So we could discuss them all together, or we could do the budget goals later. The school committee goals is really a chance for you to, to workshop a little bit more the goals that are presented. So maybe we would do those to begin.
Yep.
I can scan those here.
I don't think we have to walk through everything again. I would just suggest maybe section by section, just adding quick comments on them and seeing. And so just starting with leadership and governance. I think 1.2 belongs here, not down below. And I think 1.3 belongs down below, not here, just to even out the numbers, and that would be my suggestion. I don't know what other people think. So we're keeping 1.1 because we didn't do that last year. 1.2 was, and I think at the end we can talk about if we want to have people specifically assigned to lead them, but I think we get the goals first. But 1.2 is talking about the school safety plan, the role of school resource officer. So it's either going to be there or under, educational, or no, under family and community.
Yeah.
And I feel like we had a couple of other family and communities, and we only had one here, so I would suggest keeping it here, but I don't know what other people think.
Yeah, I sort of had the same thought. I'm fine with that.
Yeah, okay, and then for the other one, the free day kindergarten and pre-K, like, we already had that below.
Yep.
And so I think it belongs with the one below.
Yep.
Right, yeah.
So I would suggest crossing out 1.3 here, keeping 1.2. Any other comments on leadership and governance? Okay, financial and asset management. Oh, I think, yeah, financial and asset management. I had one quick comment on the goal up above. The North Reading School Committee will support a long-term plan and financial budget in order to, I would just say in order to support. I don't think we need the word reflect.
Yep.
Yeah.
Maybe just support it. And 1, 2, and 3, I had no comments on. The wording of 4, my only thought was, to me, the idea is not like, it's not reviewing it to just, I don't know if we want to put it, we might not, maybe we just keep it like this, but my only thought was, to me, it was to review it to see the impact on the families, rather than looking at the individual ones to see if they're set appropriately. I think it was, to me, my thought was more on like looking at the impact on the community. So I would have added something like the school committee will review the impact of the current structure and schedule, you know, on the families or something like that. Because to me, it's not about, are we charging enough or is it the right numbers? It's more on, we're looking at the impact.
We're looking for the impact at the highest level.
Correct.
You know, is a family just paying really too much because they've got kids in so many different activities?
Correct.
Well, and/or the other thing that struck me is, and it's along with what you're saying, are there families that aren't doing something that otherwise would have because of this? So they wouldn't be, you know, they're not included anywhere because they're just simply not doing it.
Which will be really hard to find, but.
It's
yes,
true,
correct.
but ultimately,
Yeah.
that's sort of the goal
Correct.
of, yeah, anyway.
Yeah. So I would just modify I think everything belongs here. I would just modify it to say we will review the, you know, the impact on families of the current structure or something like that.
Yeah.
And Diana, feel free to jump in. I know that we kind of added all these on without you.
No, it's fine. I was just trying to wrap my head around how you're gonna get to that data, but,
Yeah, it's tough to prove negative, right?
Well, I think what we had talked about in the one before was, I think we can look, we don't think there's gonna be many people that are paying the kindergarten fee and also paying too many high school fees, but there might be 1 or 2. I think just working with Mr. Connolly, we might be able to pull and see like, you know, how the total amount being paid by different families, and that would be one thought. And
Yeah, and I do think it would be, I mean, it would probably require a survey of some kind
Yeah.
to determine
Correct.
if there are, what the number of families are that aren't participating or aren't having their kids
Right.
participate because of fees in general.
Yeah.
Whether they perceive them to be too high, or they actually are too high for them, or
Yeah.
whatever it is.
Well, what that does is it gets you into the concept of access and,
Exactly.
and who needs more. Do we need more scholarship? Do we need less? Do we need?
Yep.
Yeah.
That's,
is the goal to just assess the current landscape, or is the goal to assess the current landscape and come up with a plan to address it?
I think right now it would be to look at it and maybe, I think that's where we're gonna see if we've done this or not. Maybe we go even further than that. Maybe we see that there's, you know, the way that they all work together, like, I think we had talked about it at an earlier meeting, there being maybe like a family cap. So like we have caps on, you know, there's like bus fee cap, there's a, you know, an extracurricular fee cap. But maybe we need to look at, should there be an overall family cap for the year or something like that, but.
Without the data, it's tough to.
Yeah, I think we need to just start with just looking at it, but it's not looking into, I wouldn't look at it as, is this fee appropriate for this? I think it's more of the impact of it, and.
Yep.
So I would support it if we just add in, you know, the impact on families of the structure, as opposed to trying to lower them.
that's fine, and like I say, we can decide whether to
Correct.
increase that scope a little bit, or make that a goal for next year, if that seems
Yeah.
more appropriate.
Correct. Okay. Any other comments on the financial and asset management goals? Moving on to educational program. I don't think I had anything here. The only question would be, is district supposed to be capitalized? We don't say North Reading, I don't know. It's different points. And then family and community connections. This is where I would remove number 3. because we have that in section 1 instead.
Correct.
So I would suggest removing that one and keeping everything else there. So we align that these are our goals. Now, seeing nods, then the question is, do we want to assign individual people to lead them, or do we want to try to do them as a group? I don't know which is better, or whatever.
I'm
I
a
don't
bigger
really have
fan
a-
of individual ownership.
You like individual ownership?
Yeah.
It's accountability.
So then the question is, should we accept them today and assign them when Noelle is here next time? Or should we say, she's not here, so she gets whatever is left to her?
I certainly think we should get her input.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
Yeah. So do we want to?
Why don't we just have the whole discussion when she's here?
That's fine.
So do we want to clean these up now and then maybe distribute for the next meeting? Is that too late, do you think, or?
No, I think that's okay.
Okay.
The next meeting is in mid-October. That's
Alright.
fine time to do goal setting for the full 10 months.
Okay, so then we'll, if Dr. Daly, if you don't mind making these few changes, then we'll vote on them at the next meeting, accept them, and we'll
Assign ownership.
assign ownership at that time.
Sounds right.
And at the end of the day, it might be that, there might even be two people that want to work on one together,
Which is
or,
fine, yeah. Or it might be something that is referred to as one of the standing
That's fine.
subcommittees.
correct.
So,
It's just, to me, it's, it holds someone's feet to the fire
Yeah,
to get it done.
yeah, I agree. I mean, and then we can update on them.
the only thing I would say is that if we're going to look at completing our evaluation prior to the election, like I guess we're supposed to,
Yeah.
Not a lot of time.
it does make it a little less time, but we can factor that in
Yeah,
and
right,
just,
that's fine.
do what we can, and then we'll
Well-
start again for the next time.
Yeah, in theory, that's a one-year issue because the next year it resets. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, I also think that the reality is a lot of these things, if any of us actually worked on them for a couple of weeks straight,
It was, yeah, it's nothing, yeah.
it's not like we need 6 months to do this.
I was
It's not like
like-
we have to do one thing and then wait 3 months for
No, agreed.
results or whatever. It's
Yeah.
just actually doing them.
And,
so-
and I do think, I think something like the fees, I'm on I'm on the subcommittees for 2 of the fee generators.
Yeah.
So, it's something I can probably look at fairly easily and
Yeah.
have an understanding of, so, yeah, I'm sure we can get.
Yeah, I think that's the one in particular, I think maybe 2 people on it,
Yeah.
where, I think a piece of it is working with Michael and just going
Yep.
through and seeing what actually has been paid out. And then I appreciate the comment on maybe a survey being needed to see about the other piece of it, but, okay. So I think that's good for now. I think we have what they're gonna be. We can vote on them. It'd also be nice to have all 5 members
Yeah,
vote on them
for sure.
as well.
Agreed.
So, okay.
Clarification.
Dr. Daly,
so
yes.
Your point was to just be consistent with the capitalization of the word district, is that what you said?
Yes, the word district.
We'll make sure of that.
You know me, I didn't add my couple
Yeah,
my
no, that's
commas,
great.
but.
And then I just wanted to share tonight that we are, one of the goals from last year was about communication. So what we've worked on through some trial and error was adding the camera here.
Yes.
Just being in the room, we didn't play video, but it sounded better, and I thought hearing from Ms. Boutwell through the speakers in the room
Yes.
was a
Sounds much
vast
better.
improvement. Could I ask Ms. Boutwell how it
course.
sounds to you and how it looks to you at home, just as a,
Yeah. I appreciate this camera view where I can see you, Dr. Daly, and I can see everyone sitting at the table, and there's kind of this other view as well, so that's pretty cool to see. When people are at the podium speaking, I could hear them really clearly, but the moment like one of the school committee members would then speak, it would get really quiet, so I had to turn my volume up really high, which would make the speaker too high. But I just accommodated it that way. It didn't really follow the voice as much when there was a speaker there. But otherwise, whoever's at the podium is crystal clear. It sounds really great.
okay. So the owl's here, so you're
Yeah,
picking,
So it's the
so,
one mic, yeah.
yeah, and it may be just picking up, just knowing to speak a
Yeah.
little louder towards the microphone for the home viewers, just something to think about. But
mean,
what's
it-
different, obviously, we don't have it there, but I think by having it here, the reason it's here is it's hooked into this system,
Yeah.
and it seems to be working pretty well.
I
So-
agree.
Okay. Good,
So
good point.
speak up, Scott, will you?
I'm
So we at
usually
least
very
made
quiet.
significant progress on that goal, we'll say.
Yeah.
At least we don't, I mean, no one would ever hear Janine.
I think
so.
I think the final test will be someone doing a presentation remotely to see if we can get that.
Yes, that'll be the next step.
Or maybe we just don't do
Okay.
that.
So we will pass over on the vote on this one. We'll do that at next meeting. I think that brings us to routine matters. There's no minutes, there's no budget update. Staffing, Dr. Daly had included it in our packet. I don't know if you want to go through it, or we just have it and,
It's such a substantial, I just
Yeah.
wanted to share that this is sort of a complete report of all the staffing and new hires through this time of the year by school.
Yep.
Our new HR administrator, Morgan Sories, kind of reformatted just slightly. It gave you just a sense of all the hires by each school. And so we're thrilled to have everyone here. I've been fortunate to take just a few minutes to have met with everyone. Most of them have been virtual, one of those nice carryovers, I think, of having everyone comfortable with the virtual meetings. It's a quick check-in. We have but it's putting a name to a face, and so getting over to the buildings and meeting them, it's not really my first encounter, so I've already met them a little bit, and it's great. We did a wonderful job, I think, with our ever-changing and evolving new hire induction program. We certainly, I'll say it again, I would love to see paraprofessionals also participate in some kind of program, but Mr. Clean's done just a wonderful job doing that. He actually took over the bus driving duties this year. We had a small enough group that we could drive the van, but he actually led the tour, and it was just a really a great experience. We had a small number of hires, even though these sheets are pretty comprehensive. Not a lot of new teachers, and I think that speaks to some of the stability we've had and some of the turnover. And at our next meeting, we're going to recognize those who've earned professional status. I believe there's 17 teachers, and I'll go back and check. I think there was about 21 hires that year, so that's quite a large number over the 3 years to have for retention, which is a great, in a time when I think hiring is changing everywhere. I think to have that kind of commitment is great. So we're going to recognize and honor those staff next week, next meeting, sorry.
I think the only question on the staffing is, are there any big holes that we're still searching for? 'Cause I think there was,
Yeah.
I think you called out psychologists as a
Yep.
role in particular, but.
Yeah, I would say that's still one of the main concerns that I have. We have a few other positions that we are trying to piece together. We did do some contracted services for that. I think we have some outside of the box ideas as well for psychologists. This is around the board. As I sit here, I just got a few emails in from other supers about it too. The psychology in general, there's just such a demand. If you're trying to get an appointment outside, there's wait lists, there's time. There's just a lot of demand for mental health supports, and I think we're seeing that in the schools. So certainly, if you know anyone that would apply, please forward that. I think we've continued to reach out and continue to try to build those positions. And what we saw was some of our school adjustment counselor positions, some of our internal folks moved into that position, and so the psychologist position, we have a 1.0 at the high school and a 0.4 position at the bachelor. I believe that's still out there. Mr. Clean, any other teaching positions we're thinking of that are out there? I know we're looking for substitute team chair. We could use some help there, but I don't know if there's any, yeah. Yes.
Creative in that we're calling lawyer a psychologist now, or?
Not that creative.
Not that creative. And I get kicked off the committee. Win-win, sorry. Bids and donations, I think we had one or two in there.
We did. I would like to move that the committee vote to accept with gratitude a donation in the amount of $1,940.12 from the E. Ethel Little Elementary School PTO for the purchase of music stands for the music teacher. Second.
Okay, discussion, hearing none. Rich?
Aye.
Jeff?
Aye.
Diana?
Aye.
I'm an aye as well. Passes 4-0.
And I would like to move that the committee vote to accept with gratitude a donation in the amount of $1,719 from the E. Ethel Little Elementary School PTO for the purchase of scooters for PE classes.
Second.
And my only comment or question is, were helmets included?
I would imagine, I don't know this, I would imagine these are like the small floor scooters that they
Yeah,
can
the-
do
Yeah.
all kinds of games with. It's really pretty incredible what they come up with those.
Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. Do a roll call vote. Rich?
Aye.
Jeff?
Aye.
Diana? I'm an aye as well, passes 4-0. Thank you very much. Subcommittee updates. Secondary School Building Committee met. It was an executive session, so I can't talk about it. There's my update.
Fair enough.
For a future schedule, Athletic Subcommittee is scheduled to meet September 21st at noon. Fine Arts is scheduled to meet September 21st at 3:15. Finance Planning Team is scheduled to meet September 23rd at 8:15 a.m. And Administrative Report, Dr. Daly.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to share, which has been mentioned a few times this evening, about the, just want to share a letter from the recognition that the high school received for the Special Olympics. So again, as Mr. LaPrette and our Cassandra also mentioned, we're one of 12 schools in Massachusetts among 164 schools nationwide to receive this status. And we have a really nice banner up as you walk down the hall. You'll see it as you're exiting as well. But this is on behalf. This is from, and I'll share this in the notes, in the minutes.
Was this to the district or to the school?
This is to the high school. It's addressed to Mr. LaPrette, and on behalf of Special Olympics International, honored to declare North Reading High School an official Special Olympics National Banner Unified Champion School. Under your leadership, the North Reading High School staff and students have demonstrated their commitment to inclusion. And so, I think this is quite a tribute to our program. The work that Mr. LaPrette's done, along with Cynthia Conant, Gina Sacco, and our special ed, Mr. Hudson, I had it in my head, Mr. Hudson's amazing work that he's done with his students and all of his staff in that program. We're going to have our unified team again playing this fall. I'm really excited to get to some of those games. And they've just done a really tremendous job with their programming and with a lot of these activities and opportunities for students. So
Outstanding.
it really is. It's great to be recognized as well, and we're very proud of that. So I certainly wanted to mention that tonight as a part of my report.
I highly recommend if there's a school activity that you want to attend this year.
Yeah,
Basketball games, the
yeah.
environment is absolutely.
I had a thought to maybe ask Mr. Hudson, maybe a student or two to come and be recognized here. It was a thought I had for the future. So I will work with them to see what they think is appropriate, but I just think it would be great to recognize. I agree. I second that. It's quite an experience, and one of my cousins is on the other team, so I got to go, and she thought I was there for everyone, but just to see like the excitement and the enthusiasm. It's really, really quite an experience. And I'm also so proud of our student body that shows up and supports our unified teams. It's really, really says a lot to the quality of the North Reading character and the student body, so.
Great.
Outstanding.
Excellent.
Thank you. Correspondence, anything else?
None at this time. I just wanted to recognize, as a part of my report as well, that we are going to be sharing out the inclusive calendar that I've mentioned in a few Blackboard Connects. This will have all of the holidays that are obviously federal and state holidays. It will have the recognized months that are recognized as a part of the calendar. There's also presidential declaration days that are included in there, and that will be included as well. And when I shared it out last time, a few people wrote to me and said, what about, Finnish American Month? And so there are others that are not part of the overall, the official recognized, but as people submit things, we will include them as appropriate. So I see it as a growing, moving document, a living document to try to share out different ideas. And my goal would be at some point during the month to share out, as I did last year, towards the end of the year, with Juneteenth and Pride Month, just some resources for staff and for families if they want to discuss, and for educators to discuss some of these ideas as well, and just to be more inclusive and to share that information. So one of those I just wanted to note, is the Constitution Day, which was on Saturday. This is something that we certainly address each year in our schools, especially through our civics program. You know, it's one of those things that it's mandated that we celebrate this week and this day, which I think is very important to celebrate the Constitution. It's important to note, though, that Massachusetts goes well beyond having a day or a week to celebrate this by having civics required. Civics is embedded in all of our grade levels through our frameworks, especially having a civics requirement in grade 8. We also, in North Reading, as you know, not only have it in grade 8, but we also require it in senior year. I'm not familiar with any other district that has so many schools don't even have 4 years of social studies required, never mind a required senior course in civics in addition to this. We have the 2 civics projects in grade 8 and in high school. And so there's certainly a lot of time and discussion around this in our civics classes, social studies classes. But we've had sort of a Twitter campaign the last few days as well. So I want to thank Mr. Yule from the Republican committee from town, who sort of questioned me a little bit and asked a little bit, and he wrote something in the paper about how important it is that we recognize the Constitution in our civic work. And I think we can always continue to grow in this area. So I'd love to see maybe next year we have an essay contest around the importance of the Constitution and things. So I think we'll continue to partner and work with them so anyone in town that wants to be involved with that, we will certainly welcome that as well, so.
And I'll call out, I thought you handled it very well when the reach out happened. I think the idea of inclusion is hearing all different ideas, and if there's things that we don't celebrate and we should, or there's no reason not to share resources, there's no reason not to, to publicize lots of things that are going out and going on, so.
Yeah, sure. It's certainly, it's a requirement that we do recognize that day. There's no specific, you don't have to have this assembly or that curriculum or this program, but we do want to talk about it. So we always talk about it in our schools, but I took that opportunity with the prompt to say, you know what, let's share it with the parents, because I think there's people that, maybe there's some parents that were able to share a resource or a topic with their children. And also just that transparency. Here are the same resources that we're using. And that, what I shared out came right from the Department of Education, and it was just great. So my thought was, you know what, I'm going to share this with the families as well. So I thought that was a great idea and a great opportunity to do. So.
Okay, thank you. Next meeting is actually before town meeting. So town meeting's at 7 o'clock. So we're meeting at 6:45.
Correct.
And then October 17th, capital improvement plan presentation. November 14th, we have a meeting as well at 6:30, MCAS presentation. I appreciate people moving up the time today, made it a little easier on a lot of things.
When is the embargo lifted on the MCAS stuff?
Coming soon. Yeah.
Oh, so it's not set yet? They just do it when they're ready?
Yeah, they've got that, and we've received preliminary accountability targets and preliminary MCAS scores. So there's a period where they need to have a discrepancy period where we're able to look at the scores and report some discrepancies. They reconcile that, and then they get back to us. So it's typically towards the end of this month, and then in October, scores will be going home. Mr. Clean will do a presentation here on accountability and on our MCAS. So, yep.
One quick question for the committee. I mean, is there any appetite to put the school committee goals on the town meeting agenda, just to sort of, we talked about doing a workshop to talk more about it, or not? I don't know. No?
I would say no.
Okay.
Just to make it just
I don't know.
because it's
Yeah.
more public. That's a public meeting
Yeah.
too, but I mean.
Yeah, I don't know if there's any, we can vote on any warrant articles that we think are appropriate then. I honestly, I received it, but I haven't gone through the warrant yet.
Yeah, I don't know that there's one, because we don't have a one that we specifically asked for, like for the special education fund.
Yeah,
but,
there's none that we sponsored, and there's none that, I don't think there's any big budget ones.
Direct impact on the.
There
on the
might
budget.
be, they were talking about maybe one on capital improvement, but I'll just have to look through there, and so we just usually vote to approve, or to, we should just
To recommend the
support,
ones
to recommend.
Ones that have a direct impact on the
Correct.
schools, yeah.
Okay. If there's nothing else, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
There you go.
I'll second.
And we have a second by Rich. Jeff?
Aye.
Rich?
Aye.
Diana?
Aye.
I'm an aye as well. Passes 4-0. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.